Thanks for joining us for this FreightWaves Special Report. I'm Dooner here with Kevin Hill and Zach Strickland. We have What the Greatonomics, right?
Right.
It's kind of a mishmash of FreightCast podcasters here. Guys, over the weekend, some people who use truckstop.com, they may have gotten this message, and they are probably still getting it right now.
Calling truckstop.com. We apologize as we are experiencing technical difficulties. Please utilize our live chat service as well as Truckstop communities. We are here to help.
All right, so guys, what happened? Lay it out. I'll read the statement that they gave us as well. So, big outage on truckstop.com, right?
Yeah, it's been out since sometime on Friday afternoon, Friday evening, something like that. So
affected many of their products, including SaferWatch, truckstop.com itself, the load board.
Basically, anything that was on their server is gone. It's offline. So
yeah, anything that wasn't on the AWS server was buggered out.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I run a company called Carrierless, and it's exclusively in SaferWatch. So
okay,
my stuff is affected with everybody else.
So if that's down, you're down.
Yeah.
So they, over the weekend and up until this morning, they'd had a statement out on social media, basically that they were experiencing technical difficulties as developments occurred. They would let people know. That persisted for a few days. Obviously, something more than that was going on. Well, they sent us this statement. It said, truckstop.com is experiencing system issues caused by malware that are affecting several services, including truckstop.com load board. We have been working around the clock to restore service and will continue to do so until we are fully operational. We have seen speculation online about the cause of the issues and want to assure you that the safety and security of customer information is our top priority. Should we determine that this incident impacted the security of the information, we will move quickly to notify anyone potentially affected. We want to assure our customers that they are our top priority, and we understand that interruptions in service can have a big impact on their business. We are doing everything we can to ensure that they get paid and can manage their business. We will provide more information as available later today. Sincerely, truckstop.com.
Yeah, I think the implication here is, it's right around Christmas. The timing could not be worse in terms. I mean, it's the tightest we've seen the market since last Christmas, effectively. So
it is that final rush. So the volumes might even be down a little bit, but the kind of the chaos and those same day loads,
and
that people rely on load board for are intense today, right?
Yeah,
so those last minute loading a truck and getting the driver home or to the next destination to be on the road for Christmas, because if that truck is stuck today, likely it'll be stuck for the next couple of days as
shippers are going to be closed.
They're going to be closed,
yeah. And so anybody that's out there on the road that was relying on spot freight, which they do this time of year quite a bit, I know that we dedicated a lot of our freight or our capacity to the spot market at that point in time. So just because you could get loads pretty quickly if you're willing to drive.
Yeah, and you can get it to where you need to go, or maybe where the driver needs to go home. Exactly. And you might not have the direct customer relationships or the contracts to get it done, so you go to the spot market to find a load to Dallas, Texas, so the driver can be home with his family or her family.
Is malware a friendlier or softer word than something that a lot of people online have speculated about, that it's ransomware?
That it would make sense if this were a ransomware attack.
Yeah.
Because it like I said, the timing is just too impeccable. Leverage is highly increased on, if they were to do that to them on their side. So, and they know that they're up against a timeline. I mean, it's the whole key of ransomware is to have like somebody up against a definitive end point to where they have to act and not think it through, and they can't find ways around it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So it could be a number of things, but malware is a general term. So,
well, typically if a company's software is shut down for this many days in a row, it's a major issue, and we've seen it with companies like A. Pile, Falcon, Triple G Express Inc., and it was because of ransomware cyber attacks. Right now, they're calling it malware. Malware can be anything from going on a wrong website and just getting a small Trojan to actual ransomware, which is locking down, erasing servers, and being on the A and B side.
And obviously, they don't want to, if this is the case, that it's not something you want to talk about very freely, because that means, like you said, there's a privacy concern, all sorts of things going on there.
You really can't talk about it, and it is interesting. I see we have it listed there, but it's just one is it server vendor? I don't know the
So
really correct term for.
I would believe this would be their own server farm, so they're their own
farm.
on-site metal. So they use Amazon Web Services for a portion of their computing, their processing, their data, but they also have a already established built-in server network, and that looks like what has been majorly impacted. Peter Latta, CEO of ADP Pile, he told FreightWaves that the first thing that hackers they were the victim of a big ransomware attack, and the first thing that hackers took out were their phone servers and their email servers. So they cut off communication, much like when you kill the radio man in combat to cut off the squad from the platoon. We've been receiving emails from them, so we know that that's the case. Their phone lines, we're not sure if they're up and operational or they just have a recording, an automation up because of the volume of calls.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think their phone system was down at some point. One point this weekend.
Yeah.
Whether that's still the case or not, I don't know. But there's a recording up now, definitely.
No, a question a lot of us have had, and I had myself when we talked to a few experts about this, is why not just move everything to the cloud, right? Why not just put everything on Amazon Web Servers if it's much more secure? And the thinking, I guess, behind that, the typical thinking was, Amazon Web Services has only been around for a few years. But prior to that, the cloud also wasn't considered to be that secure of a location. Now the school of thought on that has changed because you can do live updates on patches, they can do multiple backups, virtual backups, all sorts of different things. But also it's a financial thing, right? So they've invested millions of dollars perhaps in a server farm, but they've also invested millions of dollars in coding on the certain apps, and they've been designed to be optimized to run on the existing servers that they have. So that would take a complete rewrite. And for a company like that, how disruptive would that be?
Extremely.
Extremely, yeah.
I mean, the infrastructure itself to switch server farms or Amazon themselves are not 100% on the cloud. I think they were still on Oracle. I think Bezos actually told them like a few years ago, it's like, listen, you're going to switch over like now. And he said you have until this date to get it all done. Now, that's easier said than done, obviously. Anytime that you have IT infrastructure coding issues, having worked in that space a little bit on my end, not necessarily as a coder, but as somebody who talked to them, this takes years to switch. Once you've dedicated yourself to a certain server type, it takes years for you to divert resources.
It's like any infrastructure, right? Yeah. You have the legacy infrastructure, or whether it be roads and bridges.
Exactly.
That if you're going to convert, cell phones or a great example. I mean, we invested as Americans billions upon billions of dollars building landlines, right? Yep. And then you go to the developing world and they just skip over that. And that's kind of hardware to the cloud.
Exactly.
Type of analogy.
Once you hardline something, your efficiency goes way up for that specific task, but you lose flexibility.
Yes, you do.
We have the comments up on LinkedIn as well. So if you guys have some questions about this, we're more than happy to answer as much as we know. Jermaine Walker, he wrote, ransomware would make perfect sense. The only way through it is to pay what these people are asking for, which pretty much true, right? These folks are calculative on when they decide to attack. You guys touched on that by saying they're picking that weekend right before Christmas, right with the last push to get things onto store shelves, that last push to move goods. Are ransomware attackers, and we're not exactly, they said it's malware, so we're not entirely sure, but are ransomware attackers in general getting smarter about how they target carriers and software providers in our space?
I mean, they obviously are, because, the fact that these people potentially, I should say allegedly, we don't know for fact by any means, but if they were to do this, then for sure, to know that the freight market right now is at its peak is really impressive.
Yeah, and on another side, whether it's malware or what it is, TruckStop now is majority owned by Iconic Capital, which are heavy hitters in Silicon Valley. They manage money for Facebook, for Zuckerberg, Dorsey, Twitter, among maybe Oracle. I'm not sure. They're kind of secretive about who they manage money for, so they know how to deal with these things. So that's on a plus side on all of this. They are, certainly tech experts.
But to your point, now that TruckStop is sort of in that tech space,
makes them a target too.
Yeah. I think more people are more aware of their business model now. Maybe there's a disgruntled sector of, the people involved in the investment process or something like that now has a reason to go after them. Or now they have insider information about it.
So in that world, attacks are called vectors, and it's almost looked at the same way as disease is looked at. In fact, the first ransomware attack was done by an AIDS researcher. Did you guys know that?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if you look up the history of ransomware, the first ransomware attack was done by an AIDS researcher, and he attacked other AIDS researchers, which is pretty crazy. But when you look at the way attacks enter companies, it comes in through vectors, but some of them can stay dormant for a while. So this is something that it potentially could have been on TruckStop servers for quite some time, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know any of that. That's pretty insane, though, that they would have embedded some sort of, I mean, again, we don't know any of this, but it's, that's fascinating.
Well, no, but this just begs the topic of even if TruckStop wasn't hit with the ransomware, it's just some sort of malware. It's just an IT side issue, which is that would be the even softer way of putting it. It's an IT issue.
Yeah.
But this does beg the topic about IT security, right? Trey Griggs wrote, "Wow, this is huge. Definitely hope this isn't ransomware, but not surprised as this is happening more and more frequently than ever before. Digital security is paramount now and will continue to be critical as more and more of these supply chains become digital. Best wishes to truckstop.com team. But even more is IoT, because IoT is an even easier access point. Think about all the things in your house now, like your smart TV. Have you changed the password on that?
No.
Now think of how many of those are hanging out in people's offices and are connected to their network.
Yeah.
Well, and I think one of the easiest ways to get into anyone's security, and you can ask the DNC about this, is, and we get these emails all the time, or the phishing scams that come in. You open up an attachment and
immediately
and they're in, or we need to reset your password, or the new LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn, where friend requests or connected request, and it's all fake. You go in and accept it, and it's in. It can lay dormant for however long, and it's a very, I think probably a lot of the malware attacks that are out there are very simple entry points like that.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that Apple has been so successful in keeping viruses off their stuff is because they have a closed system.
The walled garden, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at, and I have a PC, so I've been PC guy for a while.
Oh, sure.
I
remember LimeWire?
Yeah.
Talk about vectors.
I was like, well, I'll just get a new computer.
Yeah. No, that was basically it. Every couple, and it wasn't necessarily because it was getting slow. It was only getting slow because of,
But that disposable mentality of like how I knew that it was just going to gunk up over time. But at the same time, technology was going to make obsolescence an issue anyway. Mm-hmm. So I was just willing to just re-up.
You don't want to learn Excel all over again, too. Right. I mean, that's the reason why I don't use a Mac, is I'm not going to learn Excel
again.
No, it took too long to do it the first time.
This hasn't been verified, but one of our viewers says that he analyzed some spam that he had received from truckstop.com. He said, this is Tyler Upchurch. He said, pretty sure truckstop.com got hit by the Emotet ransomware. I checked a Word doc that has been spammed to Truckstop users by account spoofing Larry from Truckstop, and that file matched Emotet ransomware. I'm not familiar. Are you guys familiar with Emotet?
No, I'm not.
I know stuff like WannaCry. WannaCry is a newer one that is very, very nefarious, hard to crack, and causes big issues for companies.
So effectively, do they just send out these big mass emails, and then whatever company they latch onto, would that be a thing, or is that?
I do think they blast, right?
Well, like the Nigerian letter, right? You send it out to as many people as you can, and you know that maybe a 1/10%, a 1/4% are going to fall for it.
You just need one person on your network, right? To be wrong once.
It's just a numbers game at that point.
Wow, that's kind of sketch.
Yeah, it's not like Mission Impossible. It's not a guy lowering himself on a cable, and plugging a thumb drive into your server bay. Yeah. Or anything like in Mr. Robot, putting a Raspberry Pi there. I love that show, by the way. But nice. It's as simple as email being a major entry point for most of these now. And a lot of times it looks like invoices. So your accounting department will get it. They go through a lot of invoices. They open it up, and it's something like an SVG file. And they didn't look at the extension.
I get those all the time. Your
SVGs.
invoice. I'm like, I don't have any invoices out, but I know how, you think, money. I'm going to get some money.
Yeah. That's how you motivate people.
Right? And there you go. You're done.
Let's segue into something here, because Jermaine Walker, he brings up a good point again, and it's something we wanted to talk about, and it's something that not just with ransomware, but something our industry isn't always the best at, and it's getting ahead of these PR issues. We saw it with Celadon, and the entire weekend, no information came out, caused a lot of speculation, and nowadays, people communicate a lot on message boards. So if you don't put out the wildfire, it just grows and grows and grows. And he mentions here that as we get into the digital age, we have to stop being so reactive. When something like this, we have to get ahead of it, both in the analog and the digital side.
Yeah, no, and the fact that you need to communicate. I mean, nowadays, if you have a problem, you really need to get in front of it. Like, you can't just let it sit and fester because you see this in companies all the time. You have some sort of change and everybody notices it, and then everybody's just like, white elephant in the room, and they just say, no, don't look over there.
Yeah.
It's not right there right now. Don't worry about that. It'll be fine. And then a few days later, it's still there, and now you've got an even bigger problem.
But sometimes you're walking a tightrope because you can't really say anything.
Well, because you don't know.
You don't know, right?
Yeah.
You don't really know, and a couple days go by, but you can't really say anything, but you need to say something. And, it would go back to Celadon.
Yeah.
I mean, what were they going to say? They're still
Well, they had nothing
to
lose at that point.
They had nothing to lose. And
although, like the
trying to do
respective drivers, I mean, I guess some of the names out there, I mean, I guess your own morality, you have a bit to sacrifice by getting people stranded and that kind of thing. But yeah.
That water is muddy anyway.
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
true.
not like the CEO is going to,
Yes.
have to answer to those questions in general anyway, moving forward.
Well, here are some of the comments that we received when this was going over the weekend, and it just said technical difficulties. Technical difficulties means a lot in the world of computing, and people are always going to make it the worst. One person wrote, 60 hours later and still down. Unlikely this is a self-inflicted wound. The complete lack of any information coming out about this from TruckStop is the most worrying issue. Why would they not want to assure their customers they have some kind of handle on this? The last update with zero new information was before noon Eastern time on Saturday. As we mentioned at 10:15 today, we did get that email from them that did call it the malware attack. That was really the only new piece of information that was included within that. But at least they're acknowledging that that's what's going on. It's not just some sort of server reset that went awry.
Sure.
That has a lot of explanatory power, though. Just saying that we're dealing with a malware issue,
and
right?
you've targeted, you've identified the problem at least. Just saying that you've identified the problem and you're working to resolve it is really all you need to say. You don't need to get too specific.
You're exactly right. Yeah.
What kind of cost does this have in the end on companies? One comment here brings it up. He said, yes, 3-day outage so far. Preparing for mass cancellations. Prepare for mass cancellations. I know I'll be canceling now. Is it major, or do most people, because it's convenient, if TruckStop is a good product aside from this issue, this one weekend issue, do people forget pretty quickly?
Over time, they will definitely recover from this, no problem, as long as their value prop is still there, because anybody can get hit with something like this.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
There's nobody that's 100% protected from a ransomware.
Yeah, I don't
malware.
think DAT is going to send out a tweet or something or a meme making fun of TruckStop for this, or someone else is going to do that, because we all know that it can be us. Our number can get called.
Yeah. So basically, whenever Target got hit back in the day, they were one of the first retailers to get hit, and so all this negative news drove down the stock, and we bought some stock. Well, it was driven down because the risk is.
Oh, look at Experian.
I know, right? Everyone faces that risk. Target was just the one with the magnifying glass on it, and they're not going to go away. This isn't going to harm them in the long term because Experian. Now we have
also
Yahoo.
Also, they're stronger in the end. Just like when you get hurt. I mean, you now are aware that you need to tighten things down. It's like going into a restaurant after they fail the food score. It's like, that might be the best time to go because now they're actually like,
didn't we just get a Chipotle in town? Yeah. I'm from the Boston area, right by in Cambridge. There was the same location a few times. I think had some issues allegedly with that, including shutdowns. So you mentioned Target. Let's pivot over to Amazon, FedEx, and retail. Someone here wrote, and this is as good a bridge as any. Yeah. The Brandon Lee wrote, I think Amazon is in worse shape than FedEx after the breakup of the two. Well, Brandon, since the launch of Amazon's delivery service in February 2018, FedEx has lost $25 billion. That's 39% in value. Despite the S&P's 24% gain, Amazon has added $240 billion, 33%. In less than 2 years, Amazon captured nearly 1/5 of the market for e-commerce deliveries in the U.S. That's directly from Scott Galloway, who wrote this amazing article that was called FedEx, basically. FCKEDX.
Right.
Yeah, so basically, and those numbers are the best numbers to have to see the disparity over the last 2 years. But know what's happening.
At the same time, though, these are stock figures. I mean, these are very fluid numbers anyway. You're talking about cyclical numbers. There's all sorts of things in stock price nowadays, including a lot of emotion. You've got different people valuing things based on cycles. It's basically technical analysis on steroids at this point in time.
Think of how good Amazon is at manipulating the market, though. Like, just the thought, and it was never even announced that it was officially Amazon that pulled out of XPO, but them doing it tank that stock. And now, right before the holidays, even though a lot of shippers wouldn't be using FedEx Ground to fulfill those final orders at this point, they do it because it makes FedEx look like they're not a growing company. It makes them look like they're in a company in decline, right?
Yeah, I think only 2% of Amazon packages are delivered by FedEx.
Yeah,
and they were phasing that out anyway.
Yeah,
I
picked
do know
a very key time to announce that.
Yeah, I do know that FedEx's performance on time, or is it on time performance, is trolling UPS and Amazon.
Yeah.
So FedEx is having difficulties.
Well, I mean, anytime you lose a lot of freight, you're going to suffer on the service end. I mean, something I've talked about and recently, UPS and Amazon packages actually get delivered faster even if you're not a Prime member during this time of year, because there's so much freight volume moving through the system. Now, that's not the case this year because they're slightly overwhelmed, maybe due to a few of that FedEx issue. I don't know how much of that you can allocate to FedEx, but freight moves freight is the common term used. So if FedEx is struggling, they have all this infrastructure set up to move Amazon volume, which isn't small, even if they weren't like a big piece of it. They're now maybe struggling to cut trucks. I read something about their purchase transportation expense has gone up over the recent years, but it's starting to climb back down or crawl back down a little bit more. So anytime that you're going to make this kind of decision, you're going to have initial cost impacts. And especially since the market's been in a softening environment over the last several months, the timing of this, I think it's real short-run or short-lived. We'll see how it works out in the end. But
well, how do we go from here? So FedEx management called Amazon Logistics fantastical, and that they would start lapping them by 2021. Are those famous last words? Because this is what Scott Galloway tweeted in his article, that in the next 24 months, FedEx will either be acquired or lose an additional 40% in value, and he thinks a likely acquirer could be Walmart, and the gangster move could be Shopify. Do you think this is there's any validity to any of that?
I think I don't know if there's validity to it, but I think it's entertaining.
Yeah,
it definitely is, because what if Walmart bought FedEx?
Yeah,
right. That they already have a pretty good relationship, and I think Walmart's e-commerce online sells around $15 billion a year right now. Right, Target's about $5 billion. Shopify, their customers who run e-commerce websites on their platform is going to be probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 billion by the end of the fourth quarter. So what if one of those guys bought FedEx?
It's always interesting listening to the conversations around a shipper purchasing logistics companies. I don't think necessarily
they're easy to run.
Yeah, it's so easy. Whenever most of the transition or the trending has been towards not owning your own logistics company. And now this e-commerce segment has made things a lot more interesting. FedEx has a lot more moving parts than simply just e-commerce and small package and parcel. They have LTL, truckload. They have the whole gamut of supply chain management, and it's international. It's not simply just American movement. So I'm not real sure about a Walmart purchasing. I mean, maybe they purchase a segment of it if they really want to up their game in terms of logistics. I know Walmart has had its trouble with kind of moving forward in technology. It's built on low-cost models and, making sure that they're not overspending.
Yeah, and I think the fastest growing segment of e-commerce for Walmart as well is through the grocery business, and how FedEx fits into groceries. Local grocery delivery, I'm not sure as well, right?
Like to your point, this is interesting to discuss.
Yeah,
but feasibility and
because this would involve Washington, right? I mean, you can't just buy FedEx. I mean, there have to be some approvals.
Yeah, there's a lot more regulations.
Where it makes a lot of sense.
Look at Shopify too. Yeah. That's really a regulatory hurdle, right? Even if they were be able to do that gangster, they're in Canada.
Yeah.
So are we going to, or is the federal government going to let a Canadian company buy FedEx?
Well, so here, but it does make sense for Walmart to at least partner harder with them in the sense about allowing returns, especially e-commerce returns through the store, and allowing FedEx to, making at least that integration of product. But the interesting thing is that Walmart talked about their e-com strategy just recently at their pitch event, and they said their answer is to just build bigger stores.
I don't understand that, know?
Yeah.
That's not how it works. I
know.
I mean, warehousing obviously is a thing, and I think that's what Walmart is really trying to get to, is just have these big giant warehouses effectively so that they can
drop ship and move in and out of stores. I like that they've done a great job, though, especially at the store down here, of integrating a very good grocery store into their retail location. Target does kind of a half-a job of doing that. Like they don't even have cucumbers there. But you go into Walmart and they have a lot of choices in there. It's surprising because you wouldn't think. But like in the superstores, and that makes me go in there and it makes me actually go in both sections and it gives me some add value instead of getting everything on Amazon, which I get a lot of my purchases. I would say at least half come from Amazon.
Yeah.
So, guys, real quick, we have a security consultant that our producer, Emily Zink, lined up for us. So he wants to talk about this truck stop thing. He'll give us a little bit more insight into that. So let's dial him up.
Perfect. That sounds great.
Yeah, the security guys, it's always interesting to hear their version.
It is, yeah. Yeah. It's great to get that perspective. And
Hello?
Hi, is this Stephen Krause?
Speaking?
Hi, Stephen. This is Dooner with FreightWaves. I'm here with Zach Strickland and Kevin Hill. We were talking about this truckstop.com outage, which they, at the moment, are calling a malware attack. So Emily told us you had some insight on this and ransomware and that kind of thing in general. So what's up?
Hey, well, let's talk about what have they said so far? Just that it's malware?
Yeah, they haven't called it ransomware. They called it malware, but their entire their on-site server side is down. Their AWS is up.
Okay, yeah, and that may be normal if their AWS doesn't have any tiebacks to their on-site stuff. The biggest thing affecting people running their websites out of their on-site is it's usually on a network that is also connected to all the desktop PCs for the business. And so someone goes and clicks a bad link or gets a bad email, and they open it up. It pops something like a crypto locker, and it just then spreads through the network in a couple minutes and takes everything down. Now, and if they have an AWS site, that's probably not directly connected to their local stuff, so it would preserve them and probably at least keep their AWS stuff safe.
What do you do in a situation like this? Is it because I've heard like ransomware attacks are almost like kidnappings. The FBI says don't pay them. So what are you supposed to do when you're locked down? Because I know that most companies, when they actually talk to a consultant, they do end up paying these to get their drives restored and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a sensitive situation. I generally tell clients that get ransomware, what are they asking versus what is your total cost of business? For instance,
oh wow! I mean, think about that for a second, though. Think about how scary that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was a hospital out in California, and their whole hospital got hit by ransomware. And so what they ended up doing is they looked at the cost of paying the ransomware. They didn't have any backups. That's the key thing. None of these guys have backups. None of them have offline backups that are kept safe. That's really your only saving grace if you get ransomware.
Yeah.
So what happened in their case was they looked at the cost and they said, even if we pay, we're out of business. So they just ended up closing. They just said, you know what, we're out of business. That's the end.
Holy cow!
Whoa.
Well,
yeah,
I've heard some of these ransomwares. Is this true that when they infect, they will actually look for financials within your system to see how much you can bear for them to ask?
So some of them do, some don't. It depends on most ransomware that you're going to see is going to be kind of simple stuff where they're just kind of basing it off of like, oh, this is how many machines I infected on your network. So they're just basing it off that. But some of the more advanced ransomware, it will actually look at these files that it's locked up. They'll look for like Excel spreadsheets. They'll look for keywords like quarterly report, stuff like that. And they may try to identify.
Find that all over your stuff, Kevin.
I know, right?
Yeah, I mean, like anyone taking a hostage, they're going to kind of be like, you know, how much do they actually have, or how big is their business? Because when the ransomware hits, it's usually not a person doing it; it's an infected bot somewhere on the internet that's spreading this stuff. And once you actually get infected, that's when a person actually becomes involved. They get an alert from the bot that lets them know, hey, I'm starting to see new activity from an infection, and it'll send it to a person, and then the person figures out what exactly they've caught.
Is the trucking industry especially susceptible? I know a lot of people are running these legacy systems. They just invested, because our industry can be a little bit behind at time, but they just invested 5-10 years ago in expensive on-site metal server farms, so they're not even prepared to move up to the cloud, which may be a little bit more secure. Does that leave a wide opening for these types of attacks?
Yeah, very much so. Because, I mean, a lot of these guys, the technology is changing trucking immensely. So many trucking firms are now tracking their trucks with IoT. They've got cellular modems on the truck so you can tell, hey, this load is bound for this place. Oh, he's stopping for his 12-hour break. So that they can tell a customer, hey, yeah, we know exactly where your load is. We know exactly the temperature of if it's a refrigerated truck, we know the temperature. We can see like G-forces on the truck to figure out if it's braking hard or if they're having issues. So, yeah, a lot of these legacy trucking firms are being thrown into the 21st century where they're going from, we're just a trucking firm. We've got, paper contracts and we're doing everything, where customers are demanding trucking firms be much more connected to their drivers and their loads so that they can get more information on where loads are going, how long it's going to take to get there, whether the load is being subjected to anything, whether the company is keeping their end of the bargain as far as like SLA service guarantees. So you're getting these trucking firms who have never touched big IT stuff other than having computers for doing email, and are all of a sudden building out whole data centers or renting space in colos to stand up all this infrastructure, and security doesn't really enter into it. And to be fair, it's not exclusive to the trucking industry. You've got companies that are just all of a sudden going, hey, we got to get on the web. We need to get servers. We need to get infrastructure. And security doesn't really come in as a question until the bitter end, where it's like, okay, we've got all this stuff. We've got a website, we've got tracking, we've got information, and suddenly they look at securing it, and it turns into what we call technical debt. We have all this stuff we stood up. We've got all this stuff we've built. What is the cost of securing it? They look at that and they go, well, do we really need to right now? And security becomes that thing like, well, we don't really want to spend to secure, because security's return on investment is you don't get anything back unless you actually get attacked. But in reality, they don't see that they're probably getting attacked every day. It's just they're not as successful at getting attacked.
So this is Kevin. I have a quick question. So what's the growth rate of malware and ransomware attacks, especially in private and governments as well, from say 2017, 2018, 2019? Do you have some ballpark numbers for that?
So off the top of my head, I mean, we've seen basically double. And that's just a rough number, because it's a quick earning industry. If you think of malware and crypto locker attacks and ransomware attacks as a company, they're just looking for quick wins, quick ways to make money. So in most cases, people are paying. So that's why you're seeing more and more of them, because there are companies who are going, it's just worth our time just to pay so we can get back in business and make money. And it works. So it's a lot like the mafia hitting you up saying, this is a nice trucking industry you got. Sure be a shame if something happened to it.
How hard is it to back up? See, you mentioned doing backups, but so TruckStop is a live load board. How much more difficult and much of a challenge that to do live backups of something, since you're constantly having new information added to your server?
Yeah, so that comes into a question of like how far back is acceptable. Like if I was going to say, hey, today you've lost everything, but how far back do your backups go? Like, if you're backing up just weekly and getting good offsite backups that are only a week old, yeah, you've lost that data for the week, but what's the data that you still had a week ago worth to you? And in most cases, initially they're like, well, we don't have the stuff that's right away, the stuff that's inbound or outbound. But then they're like, oh, but all our records and all our other stuff that we need to rebuild what we're doing right now, we got that. So, yeah, live backups might not be an option for live tracking stuff, But especially since with ransomware and stuff, you need to be doing like offline backups where you're taking like a snapshot or a full backup like once a week, and then disconnecting that from the rest of your network till the next time the backup needs to run. That's what it comes down to. The question being is, how much can you lose and still be okay?
Yeah, we used to have that at our old company. We had backups. We would purge every year and a half, 2 years, effectively. But yeah, that's a good point. Hey, this is Zach. I got a question. What are the odds that they're somehow getting? What's the threat to the private information here? Are they potentially siphoning off any private numbers or anything like that?
Yeah, credit cards, names, social security, anything like that.
So yeah, that's the trick side in, let's say you pay. What did they learn? Because, yeah, they know the key for the ransomware. So they can go through and look through anything that might contain PII, anything that might contain customer data, anything that might contain HR data. They can look through that. And that's kind of the flip side to what if you pay. Yeah, you might be back in business, but you're not out of the woods.
So
because now you actually have... Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So how do you combat this? I mean, you mentioned how they're just getting more and more bold. They're doing this more often because they're basically getting away with it. What's the cure here? What's the final solution for kind of pushing back on ransomware guys?
Because he mentioned right, paying is just making it worse, but do you have any option other than to pay?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's some basic security practices that you can put into place. And a lot of this really isn't a technical solution. Like, you can buy firewalls, you can buy antivirus, you can buy all these technical solutions, but they're only as good as the people that manage them. And those solutions aren't going to stop, Jane in HR or Dave in a VP clicking an email that's phishing and downloading a file and trying to run it. There's a lot of basic just training that people need to understand. Hey, if you get an email from someone you don't know that's like asking you to open a file and you haven't talked to this person before, call them. Don't just open the file. If you're going to visit a site and the site is asking you to download stuff, verify that you actually need to download that to do anything with the site. A lot of these big infections are not a lack of technical, but it's just people downloading and clicking things. And a lot of companies don't implement like user accounts on the machines that don't have admin rights. Like, for instance, for a company I'm consulting for right now, we are removing all the admin rights from everyone who absolutely doesn't need it. The advantage being, if they get infected and a ransomware tries to run something on their machine, it's more likely it's going to go, oh, I don't have the rights to do that, and it might stop. Versus if, let's say, you go buy a computer at Dell, and you set it up on your network at work, that computer is probably giving you admin rights right off the bat. So if you download and run something on it on your corporate network, it's going to be able to do whatever it wants, and it's going to spread wherever it can find a connection to do it. And like you said, a lot of these trucking companies, if they do have IT infrastructure, it's very legacy. So older file sharing systems, which are very susceptible to CryptoLocker. A lot of the original CryptoLocker attacks took advantage of what's called SMB version 1, which is for file shares, like shared drives between computers. SMB version 1 doesn't have strong authentication. It allows basically anyone to read right to it. So you download this CryptoLocker, it would automatically go look for shares that are connected to your computer and then start locking up all the files on that share. And then from there would look for other computers that are connected to that share and lock their files up.
Is the cloud the definitive answer? One of our viewers want to know, Jermaine Walker, he wants to know if everything should just be moved to the cloud.
I mean, so here's the trick about the cloud. The cloud can do you a lot of good, but the cloud is also not going to implement those security practices for you. They might give you hints and tips. Like, for instance, you've seen a couple of those, like people who have moved to Amazon, AWS. You have what's called basically a bucket. It's like a database. So you can use that bucket to feed applications that are in the cloud. But Amazon doesn't tell you specifically how you need to set up those shares to secure them. And by default, they are totally open. So there's been a couple incidences where people just go search using a tool called Showdown, and you can find Amazon buckets that are unsecure, and they'll contain PII and stuff. It's really a matter of you've got to do the research and figure out what's best for you. For small companies, cloud may be the solution for you. But if you're a mid-sized trucking firm or you're a very large, like national trucking firm, you may want a hybrid cloud solution where you're running your websites and everything up in the cloud, but you're keeping your databases local so that you can maintain control of those. Cloud can do a lot of good for you, but it really doesn't do anything that having a well-informed IT person on staff wouldn't be able to do for you locally. It can offset some costs, but the big issue is a lot of companies are just taking like their data center and saying, well, we're going to move to the cloud. But what they don't realize is the cloud is just someone else's computer. You move to the cloud, you've got to decide what is secure for you. They might tell you what you should do, but that's not going to stop you from not doing the best practices to make sure you're securing it.
Stephen, is IoT a really open entry point for a lot of people now? Is that only going to get worse? Is that an opening and attack vector?
Yeah, because the big issue with IoT, I'm sure you've seen what's going on with the Ring cameras, right?
Yeah.
The big trick with IoT is most IoT devices, a lot like anything, are developed and manufactured at low cost. So again, security is one of those things they're not really looking at until the bitter end. Like, okay, the product's ready to go to market. Now let's talk about security. And then once they start to look at all that tech debt to go back and secure things, they say, well, maybe we can just let it go to the field as is. And that results in a lot of issues. And the other thing is IoT devices tend to end up on networks where you've got a lot of other machines, like just desktops and servers, where they shouldn't have access to that. They should be on a separate network that can communicate between the two, but can't see those servers and desktops. So there's best practices using like VLANs, which are virtual networks, which let you segment off a physical network into separate networks, where you can control what information can go between those networks. But generally, when companies buy IoT, they just put it on the same network and say, well, it works, and we're just going to do it that way.
Hey, so how long do you think this potential attack could last? I mean, are we on the end phase of this? Can you sum it up for us and just give us a quick, what do you expect
as far
with
as
these guys?
Attack, what they're suffering?
Well, in terms of how long it's going to last,
until they pay it.
Yeah. When do you think the last day that they basically need to operate moving forward would be?
Yeah. So naturally right now, they've probably brought in an IR firm to help them look at how did they get in, what can we do? So that IR firm is no doubt looking at their machines, it's looking at their logs to figure out what happened. That IR firm is probably going to tell them what their best path forward is. If they have enough cash on hand, the IR firm may just tell them to pay, because then they can, even if they don't trust the hardware, they can take that data, move it somewhere safe, and start rebuilding. If the IR firm can, if they get lucky and they have good backups, they may be back up in a day. If they're unlucky, it may be 2 to 3 days before they really get anything going, or they decide to just cut their losses and shift or save what they can. So I've seen it go as long as a week before things really start going back to normal, because there's going to be a lot of pieces to pick up. What happened? How did they get in? Who did what? What were we able to salvage? What things did we lose that we're never going to get back? So there's a lot of inventorying to go through.
Yeah, one of our viewers, Tyler Upchurch, he writes that truckstop.com has been in the midst of this malware attack since at least December 10th or a few days earlier, which is when he began receiving malware links and files emailed to him from email accounts that were spoofing an employee at Truckstop. Does that sound pretty likely in how these things occur?
Do you know if that's a...
Yeah. So yeah, when they hit a network, they're going to try to find any way to spread themselves somewhere else. because the more people they infect, the more money they get. We've seen firms where they'll get hit by a crypto locker attack. They'll go scrape people's mailboxes and they'll just start spoofing emails, or they'll even go look through like email threads, and they'll respond to one pretending to be a user, saying, "Hey, I'm following up on this email. Click this link. I'd like to finish this up or close the deal." And yes, spoofing becomes really common after a site's been hit. And if they've been down since the 10th, they're probably they're probably in the middle of finishing up their IR and trying to take inventory of what they can bring back online.
Yeah, they haven't been down since the 10th. I think he's saying that they at least something malicious started entering the system and doing that spoofing on the 10th. I don't think it really deployed itself until Thursday or Friday.
And it doesn't say what domain it came from, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if
so it could be a separate attack.
It could be a separate. We get crazy emails every day,
Oh,
but they're not from FreightWaves.com. They're from.
It could be separate.
Yeah.
How many?
And that happens.
Is there? I guess to leave us to tie this all together. Is there an operating number of days or something where it becomes feasible? Like the longer you wait, obviously, the more it costs you on both ends. It costs you in customer experience. It costs you in financials and broken relationships, but it also probably is going to cost you more to the ransomware company as well. So, at what point do you advise people to just pay the piper?
Yeah, I mean, so if they get a proper IR team in there and the IR team isn't making much headway, I'd say once you hit 10 to 15 days, it's time to just start figuring out how much cash you can put aside and pay them off. I mean, it's not ideal. I will just caveat that. You should never pay these guys because there is no guarantee that you may get that data back. It's no different from, like you said, a hostage crisis.
Yeah.
You may pay the guy and you'll never get them back. You'll never see them again.
Except here, the hostage, after you pay him, might even stay and hide in your basement, right? Like they might open a gateway for themselves.
Yeah, that's the trick. Is that's the other half of if you pay them, you might get your business back. You might, but you have to assume this is the breach mindset. We try to educate users on the breach mindset. If someone will get in, they will get in, and what do you do once they're in? That's more how it's. You can talk about preventing them all day, but eventually someone will get in. What do you do once they're there? And with ransomware, it's really okay. You guys are here. And once you've paid that, what if they give you your data back? Great, but they're still there. Like, you got your data back, but they're still in your network. They still know everything about your network. You've got to scrub and start over with the data you got back from them. So even once you pay them, it's not just back to business as usual. You've now got to basically rebuild your infrastructure, re-image all your machines, and start over. And hopefully the IR company you've hired has started helping you figure out that path forward. Because that's one of the things they're going to do is they're going to be like, okay, we got your data back, or we've lost all your data. Let's start helping you get stable again. It's like someone coming in from a car accident and okay, you're stable in the hospital now, but now you got to heal.
Yeah. Stephen Kraus, if people want to learn more, protect themselves moving into 2020, how do they reach out to you and your organization?
So you can reach out to me at krausengineering@gmail.com. There's a bunch of really good resource sites online for doing for kind of following the security field. Krebs on Security is a good one. There's you can search for best security practices. A lot of this stuff, the nice thing about the security field is most of our information is open source. We are sharing it with everyone. We want everyone to know about it. And a lot of this stuff is it's like best practices stuff. Just, hey, you need to protect yourself by doing X, Y, and Z. And while you can go hire a company to help you do that, a lot of this is just personal and employee education stuff, like teaching them about phishing emails, teaching them about what to look for when on a website, teaching them about what files they should and shouldn't open, stuff like that.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time today. Take care.
It's no problem, guys. Hopefully they'll be back up soon. I hope everything goes well with them.
All right. Happy holidays. All right. So That was some great insight. He verified some of the things we talked about. He gave us new information. It's such an important topic, and I think, like we're saying, is they've said it's a malware attack. Mm-hmm. It's only speculative that it may be a ransomware attack, but for us coming on here, ransomware attacks in general, we also just want to fill in the blanks for a lot of people on how those work and how at risk the supply chain can be and how disruptive any type of malicious attack can be to computers.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point about how when you're building something, you're not really thinking about security. I mean, it goes beyond security. I mean, when you're building a company, product, whatever you're doing, you're always looking for the ROI. Like as a financial analyst, I always ask for the ROI on something, and a lot of times that ROI is totally hidden, or it's just a risk mitigation.
It's a black swan event.
Yeah.
Right. So basically, an attack, whether it's malware, ransomware, is a black swan event, and you can't get an ROI out of that. You can't even predict when it will happen, but it does happen. Well, I mean, it happens to.
I guess there is a way you can put an ROI on it, and it's terms of risk management, and it's saying like, if you have a 0.05% chance of a malware, ransomware attack over the next 5 years, the ROI is pretty low. I mean, in terms of developing security, I'm sure it's a lot higher than that. But just for intents and purposes of evaluating it, very few people, and myself included, over the past have been like, oh, I'm going to put an ROI on something to manage my risk.
But you could do this ROI, and I know this is probably not mathematically correct, but you could say 50-50. We're either going to get attacked or we're not. So let's do 50% odds.
Yeah, no, and we actually did some calculations over like whether or not we might go out of business if we were to change our infrastructure. So, if you spent X amount of dollars to make your infrastructure better, improve it, but there was a 10% chance that you would literally lose 2 days worth of revenue, that puts you out of business. So it's not worth it. So you can actually go the other direction.
You can, and everyone out there is acceptable to these attacks. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I know there's some strategies hitting local city governments for like $10,000 a pop, right?
And hospitals he mentioned too. So it's affecting people's health as well and their well-being. It's scary. It had to shut down the hospital.
Yeah. And if you think about it, you hit a small business or a city government, and you just ask for $10,000, right? It's easier to pay than it is to bring in someone, because that's going to cost you more than $10,000 to figure everything out. So you just pay it and go on.
Right. And one of the most eye-opening things was this whole IoT thing. I think we're all getting really excited about the smart devices.
Yeah.
How we're looking. We got our Ring doorbells and all that kind of stuff, and it's basically like, well, it's all manufactured in China as cheaply as it can be. And it's like,
well, what about Huawei, right?
Yeah,
they got in big trouble.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, wait a minute, we're all just trusting all of this technology to have been developed and thoroughly vetted, when the real case is that it probably hasn't.
Yeah.
No.
Well, we heard that in like baby monitors. Like if you had a kid and you read those kind of things, it was like people were hacking into, and there was like dark web sites for people who just watch your career, which is like creepy and like horror movie ass to begin with. It almost sounds fake, but it's a real it's a real thing.
Yep.
But now nefarious actors are using that same exact exploit, that same exact technology to get within your system. But again, a lot of times it's just as simple as email. So protect yourself. Be safe out there, guys. One of the things that is great about doing breaking news in these special reports is over the weekend, this was going to be about FedEx and the decline in Amazon. But then this truck stop thing broke, and very quickly things evolved, and we got that statement, and we kind of refocused the show. I wish we did a little bit more on FedEx, but I know that we all have to get away for the holidays as well. Yes. So we should get together and continue that conversation. I'm sure that will develop after the holiday season as numbers come in as well. So we'll definitely do another special report on that one. Guys, anything you have to say in summation about all this?
I would just sum it up. Everyone is acceptable to these attacks, and they're as simple as clicking on an attachment from someone you think you know, or someone that you don't know, and you get a little greedy on invoices, or someone, your superior, your boss sends you an email, but it's not really his email, but it says his name, and you click on something, and there you go. I mean, that's as simple as it gets. And if you have 500 employees or 1,000 employees or even 50, making sure that they're all savvy enough to to figure out what's a scam and what's not is difficult.
Our CEO sends emails about that at least
time.
once a
All the
month
time.
about how he's not going to email you for your banking information, for your money, and be very cautious.
And this technology has given us a big glut of freedom, if you will, over the last bit. And I think, was it Thomas Jefferson that said, the price of freedom, or is it Benjamin Franklin? I may be misquoting. Price of freedom is
both pretty smart guys.
Yeah, I know.
Price of freedom is vigilance, and it just means that you have to be more cautious, and tenuous in how you go about things. But I think, again, we don't know if this is ransomware or not. I think truckstop.com is still a pretty viable. I mean, I know.
Oh, definitely.
Talking to most people out there in the space, they really, it is a pretty solid product, and I think they've got the right idea moving forward.
It is, and it goes back to everyone is susceptible to this, right? So,
nobody's cheering. Like, even your competitors, they don't cheer when you go down like this, because it just means that you could be next, because now they're targeting your space. So if you're the DATs of the world, you're not. Exactly. I think that if you're them, then go check your servers right now, back them up, do a refresh, and get your IT on it. Because they're out there. Yeah, the wolf's coming to the door.
If you're a trucking company, tech company, any kind of company in this space or any other, you should be sending out an email to your employees detailing how and all the email scams that IT is seeing, and doing refresher courses on security and vigilance about this
for sure
this week and next week and the week after, definitely. Right.
Stay tuned to FreightWaves.com and our social. We will update this in the story on TruckStop as information becomes available. I know that on this, if you're watching on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, you guys have a great quarter, guys, that will be airing a little bit later today. I think around 1 p.m., if I'm correct?
2 p.m., I believe. 2 p.m. Eastern time today.
Same channel as this. And then if you subscribe to Freightcast, you'll be able to get the podcast version of that. You'll also be able to get the podcast version of this directly on the Freightcast feed. This one will be exclusively on there. Great Quarter Guys, you can also follow at Great Quarter Guys. You can follow Zach's show, Freightonomics, again, also on Freightcast. All podcast players everywhere. Or just download the FreightWaves TV app, and you can watch all of our shows because they're also filmed. Yep. You can stare at us through the holidays. You can show your family what you do, and they will be they'll be bored. Or maybe we made it fun for them. I don't know. Anyways, everybody out there, have a very happy holidays. Have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year. We'll be back to our normal It's kind of weird how things fall this year with Wednesday being Bolt. So normal content schedule will be in January, but things will be coming out along the week. So guys, great. I don't know. Follow Zach Strickland. You can look him up on LinkedIn. Follow Kevin Hill. Look him up on LinkedIn. And Timothy Dooner on Twitter at Timothy Dooner. That's DOONER. We'll see you guys, I don't know, next year.
Next year.